Hey everybody, what is up? Welcome back to Final Trade. Are we slowly beginning to exit the overly flashy era, and what will we remember of it in years to come? I don't have one of the Throne of Eldraine collector booster boxes. It came one set before Theros Beyond Death, but Throne of Eldraine was the first set to have collector booster boxes, and at first people hated them. People said it was a terrible idea. It was going to flood the market with too many mythics and rares and crater the value of everything. Maybe it's hurt the value of things, but the reality is never as bad as the prognostication. And the real shame of the flashy era is too many variants, so nothing is special. And famously, I've talked about how the Modern Horizons 2 enemy fetch lands have 7 variations within the set, 7 different versions of one card within a set. And they're different foil treatments, foil or not foil, border or not border, retro or not, etc., etc., etc. It's just way too much variation. And people are really turned off by it. Eventually, it just gets to be too much. Some people hate the flashy art style, some people hate all the bling. But at some point here, probably sometime in 2022, I think we're going to see the end of collector boxes. Maybe they'll make it into 2023, hard to say. But at some point, these awesome collector booster boxes will stop being a product. Like a lot of things that WotC does. Over time, the player base just starts to give a collective yawn to it. It doesn't sell as well, and WotC moves on to newer, bigger, better ideas that also don't sell as well and that the player base yawns over. And one day that will befall collector boxes also. And then time will pass, distance will be created, memories will fade. As someone said in the comments, memories go from HD to fuzzy, and I thought that was really insightful. And one day, a lot of this will be forgotten in the sense that the negativity surrounding them, the dislike of all the variations, stores not even buy listing the variations because neither the stores nor the players can figure out what exactly is what. Maybe TCG Player has it correct in their database, maybe not. But one day, a lot of those problems will be forgotten, and people will start to look back at the flashy era. And I believe, now here's where my conjecture starts, they will say, you remember the flashy era? You remember those etched foil Japanese variant mystical archives? Oh man, those were awesome. Do you remember the expedition lands in the box toppers in those collector booster boxes? Oh yeah, those were great. You remember how they had 7 variants of the fetch? Oh man, that was awesome. And people will look back with fondness at all of the excessive bling of the flashy era. And I really believe this will happen given 3, 4, 5 years after whenever the end of the flashy era comes. Something else replaces it, something else that the market immediately gets bored of, players immediately collectively yawn at, and they yearn to move on to the next thing again because the current thing is never good enough. And the last thing, oh, if only WotC would go back to the last thing, we could be happy again. One day this will come, and I think there's a possible future where these stupid old collector boxes, these tiny overpriced things, nearly $200 each, 150 to 200 each for what's in here, 300 cards, not even that many, it's like 180. One day these ridiculously overpriced things will be highly sought after for the amazing amount of bling that they have in them. And people will say, oh, I always loved the collector box. I was so sad the day that they took them away. Even though their angry rants on Reddit would reveal that on the day they took them away, they bid them farewell and said, I hope they never return. So I think we may be headed for that future where the biggest winner of the flashy era, the decried and overly excessive variants, and all of this excess, the biggest winner will be the best, most distilled version of all of that excess, all of that bling, all of the ridiculous variations, the collector box. We'll see. It'll take a couple years 4, maybe 5 years to figure out if this is going to happen, but I think there's definitely a possible future where it does, given how people react to the past, given the way that nostalgia changes your opinions. You know, Mark Rosewater had a famous story that he was working for Wizards of the Coast way back in, I believe, 1996, during what became termed as the Black Summer, when Necropotence decks were basically destroying every tournament in the country. And people did nothing but complain about Necropotence, how broken it was, how it had warped the formats, how you just could not be competitive unless you were playing a Necropotence deck. But then a mere 2 or 3 years later, after Necropotence was restricted, after it cycled out of Standard, and after it was just no longer the new hot thing, people started to come and talk with him about how nostalgic they were for that Black Summer that was a great time in Magic, and how they loved Necropotence, they loved playing it, and they loved that the tournament scene had been defined by it at the time. People's memories are really a lot squishier than we recognize. We don't remember things correctly, and we delude ourselves into imagining memories that weren't really there. I think ultimately these collector boxes will be a victim of that also, but in a good way. People will one day look back nostalgically at these colorful little packed boxes of value and all the amazing variants of foil that are inside, and then they'll want to pay a lot of money for you to have stored them for all those years. If you like this kind of content, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and join me on Final Trade. Thanks a lot.